In last week's episode, we talked about the real triggers for your habits. And it's not the external cues that we've been told, right? It's not the plate of cookies on the counter or the number on the scale or your alarm clock or that person in your life you find so frustrating. It's actually your thoughts, or more accurately, your unexamined thoughts. Like, I deserve a treat. I'm too tired. I'll start on Monday. What's wrong with me? Right? These thoughts come with built-in rewards, including pain avoidance. So if you're not really aware of them or don't know how to deal with them effectively, including like arguing with them, then they're running the show. So what do you want to do instead? That's what I'm going to show you now. Welcome to Happy and Healthy with Amy, the brain health podcast for women in midlife who want to not just survive, but actually thrive during the menopause transition and beyond. I'm Amy Lang, master health coach, best-selling author, and daughter of Alzheimer's, and I'm here to help you make this next chapter of your life the best one yet. Well, hi there, Amy here. Thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome back to another episode of the Happy and Healthy podcast. This is part 4 of our Why You Keep Getting Stuck series on behavior change. And it's the episode where, if I do this right, everything's going to come together for you. Okay, we're going to connect all the dots. So, quick recap. In part 1, we covered the stages of change and the barriers to change and how you can shape your environment to better support you and your goals. In part 2, we discussed the behavior formula and I introduced the rider-elephant path metaphor, right? In part 3, I showed you the real trigger, the thought between the cue and the behavior, and why fighting it doesn't work. And then today, you're going to find out what to do instead. So I'm going to show you what your brain actually needs for lasting change. And I'm going to give you a simple 3-step process to work with your brain instead of against it. Okay, so before we dive in, if you're new to this podcast or this series and you haven't watched or listened to parts 1, 2, and 3, I want you to please hit pause now and start from the beginning. Because while this episode can stand on its own if you're familiar with the topics, if you're not, there's a really good chance you could get lost. Because each episode has been building on concepts I've introduced in the previous episodes. So again, I implore you to start with part 1 on the hidden barriers to change. Okay, so for those of you who have caught up on all the previous episodes, let's talk about what your brain actually needs in order for lasting change to happen. All right, so to start, it's important you understand the new habits you want to form, right? That rewiring in your brain you want to achieve, it doesn't happen with pressure. It happens when there's repetition, safety, and meaning. So when you try to fight an elephant thought, here's what's happening in your brain. Okay, deep in your brain, you have a structure called the amygdala. It's your brain's alarm system, and it's constantly scanning for threat, always on. Okay, so when you try to fight an elephant thought, when you argue with yourself, no, you can't have that. You need to be good. your brain registers threat. Okay, the threat of your wants and needs not being met. And so what happens? Your amygdala activates, the alarm goes off, and stress hormones like cortisol get released. And unfortunately, your prefrontal cortex, right? That's the rider, the part of your brain that makes conscious, thoughtful, intentional, logical decisions, actually goes offline when you're in threat mode. So by fighting the elephant, you're literally shutting down the part of your brain that's responsible for helping you make a different choice, a new choice, right? So the elephant's primary residence is in your brain's limbic system. And this part of your brain doesn't respond to logic or arguments. It responds to feelings and emotions, to safety, to reward, right? And when the limbic system feels threatened, it takes over. This is survival programming, and it's much, much faster than conscious, rational thought. So when you're in a fight with a threatened elephant, you're in its terrain, right? The elephant will win because it's designed to win when survival feels at stake. Now, your habits live in the part of your brain called the basal ganglia. And it responds to repetition, as in the more you do something, the more automatic it becomes, right? Safety, because if there's a threat, the new pattern can't encode properly. And then reward. So we're talking about the release of dopamine stamps the pattern into place. Okay, so think about what happens when you try to start a new habit. Say, eating a serving of vegetables with each meal, or adding a strength training workout to your current fitness routine. Okay, if the change feels too big, if you catch yourself thinking, not sure I can do this, this is really uncomfortable, or this isn't me, right? Your brain registers threat and your amygdala activates. And then what thoughts fire? This is too hard, right? I can't do this. I'll start when things calm down. Those thoughts aren't random, right? Your brain wants to avoid uncertainty. Uncertainty is stressful. So it's trying to protect you from what it perceives as a threat. As a matter of fact, there was this research study done back in 2016 that showed people are actually more stressed when they were told there was a 50-50 chance of them receiving an electric shock than when there was a 100% chance. So again, our brains aren't wired to enjoy uncertainty, okay? Don't leave me hanging, right? But if the new behavior is small enough to feel safe, the amygdala doesn't get activated, right? If it's rewarding enough, the release of dopamine reinforces the behavior. And if you're kind to yourself through the process, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system and staying out of threat. And so the new pattern gets to encode. This is why tiny habits work. This is why celebrating small wins, especially immediately after you take action, matters. All right, so now let's talk about the compassion connection. So we all have an inner critic, right? Unfortunately, self-criticism activates the same threat circuits in your brain as actual physical danger. So your amygdala can't tell the difference between a tiger chasing you and your own inner critic. So when you beat yourself up for having an elephant thought, like, what's wrong with me? Right? Why am I not disciplined enough? you're triggering threat. Again, you're activating the amygdala, and in the process, you're shutting down your prefrontal cortex. So self-compassion isn't soft. It's strategic. Okay, because again, self-compassion activates your parasympathetic nervous system. That's the rest and digest system, right? The safe enough state. And that's the only state where behavior change, like healthy habits, can actually take hold and become sustainable. This is why the approach I'm about to teach you is about kindness. Not because you deserve kindness, right? Though you absolutely do, but because kindness works. Whereas pressure creates threat. And threat shuts everything down, right? So remember, for new healthy habits to stick, for your brain to form new pathways, it needs repetition, safety, and meaning. So one of the key takeaways from the last episode was that you can't out-argue the elephant. But you can redirect it. So the elephant responds to feelings, not facts. So you want to offer it a thought that comes with its own reward, right? And one that aligns with where you actually want to go. All right? So here's the simple 3-step process that I want you to use. Step 1, notice the thought. And this is probably going to be harder than it sounds, right? Simple and easy are not the same thing. So the thoughts we're talking about are fast and they feel like truth. And remember, that first thought is automatic. You can't stop it from firing. But the moment you notice it, oh, there's an elephant thought. You've created space. You've stepped out of automatic mode. And you can become an observer of your thoughts. No judgment, no fighting, just awareness. I call this inserting a pause. Okay. Step 2, name the reward or threat. So ask yourself, what is my elephant getting from this thought? Is it seeking relief, permission, rest, comfort? Or is it trying to motivate me through fear and shame? Okay, when you can name it, you have power. Because now you understand what the elephant actually wants. And here's the compassionate part. The elephant isn't wrong to want these things. Relief is a legitimate need. Rest is a legitimate need. Permission, belonging, these are all legitimate needs. The problem isn't what the elephant wants, it's the strategy it's using to get it. So step 3, offer a better reward. Now this is where most frameworks fall short, right? They tell you to fight the thought or replace it with something positive. But the elephant doesn't want positive. The elephant wants a reward. So you need a new thought that gives the elephant something it wants, right? Moves you toward your goal, feels safe, right? Small enough that your amygdala doesn't panic, and is kind. So no shame, no pressure. If the redirect feels like punishment, it's not going to work, right? The elephant will reject it. So let me show you how this works with the thought that we unpacked in the last episode. So to set the scene, you're tired, you see a plate of cookies on the counter, and the thought fires, I deserve a treat. Step 1, notice. Oh, there's an elephant thought. I deserve a treat. You've just created space. right? You're no longer on autopilot. Step 2, name it. What does my elephant want? Does it want permission? Comfort? Does it want to feel like you're being kind to yourself after a long day? Remember, those are legitimate wants. Your elephant isn't wrong. Number 3, redirect. What's a thought that gives my elephant what it wants and moves me toward my goal? How about, I deserve to feel good in my body. I deserve a brain that's healthy and functioning well. I can treat myself by taking a nice long hot shower. Or even simpler, I deserve a treat. And the best treat is how I'll feel tomorrow if I skip this cookie now. Notice, I'm not telling the elephant it's wrong. I'm not saying you don't deserve a treat. That would be an argument, and I'd lose. I'm saying, yes, you deserve a treat. Here's an even better one. Right? The elephant gets permission. The elephant gets self-compassion. But now it's pointed in a direction that serves you, that's aligned with your goals. Right? Now, what about the threat thoughts? You step on the scale. You see a number. The thought fires. What's wrong with me? Why can't I figure this out? Step 1. Notice. Ooh, there's a shame thought, right? Your brain is trying to threaten you into change. All right? Step 2. Name the reward or the pain avoidance. So this thought is creating threat, right? We're talking about fear of judgment or fear of rejection, right? Because acceptance and belonging and connection, those are real needs. And without them, those are serious threats to our survival. By the way, these thoughts are only threats if you accept their premise. So if the question is, what's wrong with me, right? You're accepting that there's something wrong with you. If you are asking yourself, why can't I figure this out? Well, I would say that you are figuring it out right now, just listening to this podcast, right? And if it's about the fear of judgment of others, if you've conflated your self-worth with the size and shape of your body, this is something that we want to disentangle, right? This is how that shame spiral kicks in. So again, there is nothing wrong with you, and you are figuring it out right now. So step 3, redirect. What is a thought that offers compassion instead of threat? How about, this is hard and you're still here, still trying, right? One number doesn't define you. And what's one small thing you can do for yourself today? You're not arguing with the shame. You're offering your nervous system safety instead of threat. You're keeping the rider in charge. Again, small enough to feel safe and kind enough to repeat. All right, now I want to show you the most powerful redirect of all. It's about identity. So the elephant doesn't just respond to immediate rewards. It also responds to who you believe you are. So when you think, I'm someone who eats healthy, eating healthy becomes easier. It's not a decision anymore. It's just what you do. So the elephant wants to be consistent with its identity, right? Aligned with the identity. So when you think, I'm someone who always gives in to cravings, giving in becomes easier, right? The elephant says, this is just who we are. So think about some of the identities you might be carrying around without even realizing it. How about, I'm an emotional eater. I'm a bad sleeper. I'm a worrier. That's just what I do, right? I'm not an athlete, or I'm not a gym rat, right? I'm just not someone who likes to exercise. These feel like facts, don't they? They feel like truth, but they're actually just unexamined thoughts, maybe an opinion, right? And in many cases, they're beliefs or opinions that you've accepted without question. And every time you repeat them out loud or in your head, you reinforce them. So the elephant hears, this is who we are, and acts accordingly. Okay, so the most powerful question you can ask when an elephant thought arrives is, what would the person I'm becoming do right now? Not what should I do, right? That's rider talk. The elephant ignores it or resists it. But who am I becoming? What does she do? Okay, so here's what that shift might sound like. Instead of I'm an emotional eater, I'm becoming someone who knows how to process my emotions. I'm learning new ways to comfort myself. Instead of I'm a bad sleeper, how about I'm becoming someone who prioritizes rest? I'm building a sleep routine that supports quality sleep. Or instead of I'm not a gym rat, even just I'm not a gym rat yet. Or I'm becoming someone who moves her body because it feels good. I'm trying out different forms of movement and looking for movement I actually enjoy. Notice the language, right? I'm becoming, I'm learning, I'm discovering. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being in motion towards that future self. All right? So let's go back one more time to that cookie example. You're tired, you see the cookies, the thought fires, I deserve a treat. You notice it. You name it, permission or comfort, right? And then you ask, what would the woman I'm becoming do right now? How about the woman I'm becoming nourishes her brain, doesn't need cookies to feel cared for, right? Is finding other ways to recharge. That's not an argument, right? That's an invitation to step into a different version of yourself, to have the current version take care of your future version. So this works because identity is a reward, right? When you act in alignment with who you're becoming, you feel an integrity. There's pride, self-trust, self-efficacy. And make no mistake, these are elephant rewards. And they're far more sustainable than the temporary relief of I deserve a treat. Right? And here's the bonus. Identity changes through repetition. So every time you choose actions that align with the woman you're becoming, you're strengthening the neural pathway for the new behavior. Right? The basal ganglia encodes the pattern. And over time, the woman you're becoming becomes who you are. Again, small enough to feel safe, kind enough to repeat, and meaningful enough to matter. This is how the brain actually changes. And this is actually what my book, Thoughts Are Habits Too, is all about, right? Your thoughts aren't just passing events. They're habits. They shape your identity. And when you change your thought habits, you change who you believe you are. Okay? So here's what I want you to take away from this series. Most of the time, you can't control the external cues. You'll see cookies. You'll smell cinnamon, right? You'll get offered dessert. You'll encounter people who push your buttons. And you can't control the first thought that fires, right? But once you notice it, you can direct your mind. You can name what the elephant wants. And you can offer it something better. And you can step into the identity of the woman you're becoming. So that's not fighting against your biology. That's working with your brain and body, right? So remember, new healthy habits don't form by using pressure, right? The changes we want in the brain form from repetition, safety, and meaning. Again, small enough to feel safe, kind enough to repeat, and meaningful enough to matter. Okay, so try practicing the 3 steps this week. And I do recommend keeping a journal handy. So step 1, listen for the elephant's voice. Pick one behavior you're working on. Eating, movement, sleep, stress management. Okay, and this week, just practice noticing the elephant thoughts when they arrive. Step 2, name the reward or the threat, the pain avoidance. And when you catch a thought, ask, what is my elephant getting from this? For reward-seeking thoughts, is it relief, permission, or rest, or belonging? And for threat-activating thoughts, is it trying to motivate you through shame? Is it about to trigger a shame spiral? Write it down in your journal and look for patterns. Okay, and then step 3, direct your mind. I want you to experiment with redirects. So remember, the second thought is a choice. Once you've noticed the thought, try offering your elephant a different one that gives it something it wants, but moves you toward your goal. Right? See what happens. So some redirects are going to work better than others, right? That's okay. That's data. We can learn from it and use it next time. Right? There will be a next time. And then step 4, ask the identity question. So when an elephant thought arrives, right, when you notice it, try asking, what would the woman I'm becoming do right now? See how that feels different from what should I do, right? The first thought is automatic, but you get to choose what the woman you're becoming thinks next. And then, of course, even with this new knowledge and insight, the elephant is going to win, especially when life starts lifing, right? So I want you to hear and remember this. That's not failure, right? That's data. So when the elephant wins, you learn what reward it was really after. You get to learn what situation triggered it. You get to learn what redirect didn't work, right? You're learning and growing, and that's awesome. I want you to keep going, right? And of course, I want to hear from you. So, what elephant thoughts did you catch this week? What rewards did it want? What redirects worked? So send me an email or message me on Instagram or Facebook or comment below, right? I love reading your messages. And if you're finding this hard to do on your own, that's what coaching is for, and I'm here for you. So you can schedule a session with me at moxie-club.com, right? click on programs and you'll see all the different options that are available. All right, so I'm going to wrap things up today with a quote by James Clear. First, you make habits. Then, the habits make you.